And you've got a sheet of 25 economic fundamentals as well in front of you. And we're going to go through some of these that are really high value resources on those. And really, this is about understanding that you are running your real estate sales as a business. Most agents do not treat it like that. But here at KW, we want to help you focus as you are a business owner. And so part of that is understanding these economic fundamentals that help drive success financially. And Keith Cunningham, he said that you must know the numbers that drive your business. Ignorance is not bliss, it's expensive. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today and go through 5 or 6 different key touch points that are important, and then just highlight a few of these economic fundamentals that you should really pay attention to.
For those of you who are sitting in the back, I don't want you to miss out on it. So come take a seat up front so that you can get your highlighters and your handout so that you can complete your assignment when the class is over. Steve. Okay, it'll be fun, I promise. Task number 1, what are you spending your money on? Pull the last 90 days of all transactions. So when I meet with agents and we talk about their finances and I ask them, like, how is your business? What are you spending your money on? How are you doing? I usually their eyes glass over and they cannot tell me specifically if I ask them for a specific category, how much money they're spending in that category, or if I ask them, they'll give me a rough number. And then if I tell them to go home and prove it to me and to come back, the number that they give me is not even close, right? So I'm going to ask you to go back home and I want you to print off the last 90 days of your bank statements and any credit cards that are tied to your business. All credit cards, debit accounts, the checking accounts, anything that is tied to your business. And I want you to print off all transactions for the last 90 days, right? Everybody can you commit to do that for me, right? We're in a shifting market. So understanding where you're spending your money is more critical now than any other time, right? And I'm not asking you to do something that I don't do here every day, right? So pull your 90 days of all transactions. And then I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. I'm going to ask you to do that for your personal expenses too, because that matters just as much. Okay, can you do that? Okay. Second, you're going to take those 3 highlighters I got, yeah? And this is what you're going to do. You're going to go through and you're going to highlight every single expense. Every single line has to have a color on it. Every single line. Every single line. Right? The first one is going to be, I have no idea what that expense is. The second one, you're going to color, I like this one. I like to spend money on it. I feel good about that expense. I want to keep it. And the third one is, I have to have that. Right? So every expense in your personal life and in your business is going to have a color label. Now you can take some action. Now you can make some decisions, right? And you can actually have some totals and know exactly where you are.
Now, Novalee's a little old school. She likes the paper and pen. I'm a little bit more digital, right? A little bit further in the future.
He would download it and then he would take, yeah.
Yeah. So
you would highlight the cells.
You can do it.
Or highlight the cells.
Yeah, you can do it on Excel or something like that and highlight them. Another way is who uses some sort of app to track their finances or software. Okay, a few of you. One that I'd recommend checking out, just test it out, is called Truebill. Truebill. It's a blue app. You can choose how much you pay for it. I think their lowest is like $3 a month. Highly worth it. But what it will do is go through and automatically categorize all of your expenses. And it will show you the ones that are repetitive. So it'll say, hey, you pay for Comcast every single month, and this is your bill. They'll go in and negotiate. If you pay like $100 or $200 a month for Comcast, they'll say, we'll go negotiate for you and lower the bill, and we'll split some of the profits that we save you, right? They also have a feature where, again, I actually did this with a family member recently where we went through that, And they're like, oh, we didn't actually realize that this specific company was charging us X, which Vasa, who's had that issue before, right? Like we thought it was $25 a month and we're getting charged $65 a month. And they didn't realize that because they weren't tracking it. So they thought it was $35 a month and it's been 65 consistently. So there was an issue there that they could go chase down that money. So things like that, that's super helpful. So Truebill is a cool app that you can test out. Super simple, hooks right to your bank, and then it will read all those expenses. So test that out.
Cool. The next thing is everything that says, I have no idea what it is, you have to cut it. You literally have to cut it. I was listening to Jason Abrams when he had this discussion online, and he actually did this. He said, if I don't know what it is, I'm going to cut it. I'm going to wait and see who yells about it, and then we'll have a discussion. And so he cut everything that he didn't know what it was. About 2 weeks later, his little boy, as 10, came up to him and said, Dad, somebody, I don't know what happened, but all of my men in some online game are gone. And he was all distraught about it. And he's like, well, how much money was that? And anyway, figured it out. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to fix that for you. And he gave him the money to get his little men back. But out of everything that he cut, that was the only person who complained. The only one. And the amount of money that he was spending that he didn't know what it was pretty darn massive. And the only one that complained was one little boy and one expense. So he saved a lot of money by doing that.
Words of wisdom to the men out here. Just be careful. Okay. I've read on my statement so many times, Sun River. Now, do any of the ladies know what Sun River is? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was. Julie did, for sure. Now,
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a subscription either. Well, it's not really.
I would suggest you do that with a partner,
Yeah.
not by yourself. Okay, so that's one of your colors, right? If you don't know what it is and your partner doesn't know what it is, you cut it. Flat out, you cut it. That's one color. The second color, the things you like to have, you need to have a plan. At what point are you going to have to cut it, even though you like to have it, right? If your budget, your income hits a certain point, when are you going to have to cut that? If you have a plan, at what point you're going to have to cut that, it takes all of the emotion out of it, right? And if you have an agreement with your partner about when that is, even if it's Sun River, you both agree about when you're going to have to cut that. If things get to this point, we're going to have to cut the cable TV. If things get to this point, we're going to have to cut the pedicure or whatever. Then the emotion is out of it and you've agreed in advance. It's a much easier conversation. And when things are really, really tight, sometimes those things do have to go, right? Okay. And number 5, communicate more often and have an accountability partner. Every month, the second Monday of every month, I have a meeting with Boyd, Johnny, and Shoni, and I'm accountable for every dollar that has left the market center the previous month. But not only that, I am accountable to all of you for every dollar I spent the previous month because of profit share. And I take that job very seriously. In fact, if you've tried to get money out of me for an event or something, you know that I am pretty tight with the budget here because we give 48% of the profit back to you every single month in profit share. And I take that very seriously. So if you can imagine Boyd, Johnny, Clay, and Shoni sitting across from me asking me where I spent every dollar, you can imagine how I feel when if I went over in a certain an account and I'm accountable for that, how much pressure I feel for that. So I would hope that you would have an accountability partner that you can have those kinds of discussions with. So I want this book. How many of you have read this book? This 20%. I read the whole thing, dang it. I only do that when I read for fun. I highly recommend this book. Read the whole thing. Profit first. Yes, I know. I don't know why I tell people stuff. Profit First, I could not recommend more. This is an amazing book. I love it. It talks about paying yourself first, setting up savings account. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. But let me read what it says about an accountability partner. Number one, your stick-to-itiveness skyrockets because someone else depends on you, and your good old friendly competition doesn't hurt either. So if you don't have a spouse or a partner at home, find a coworker that you can use as an accountability partner. Two, when you go through a painful process with others, the pain is diminished. I would agree with that. The MCAs all commiserate when it comes to budgeting and financing. Number three, the action of enforcing a plan or system with someone else ensures that you are more likely to do your part. And number four, when you meet regularly with your buddy or group, you get into a rhythm that makes it easier to stay the course and achieve your goals. Big aspirational goals get broken down into smaller achievable milestones. Profit First works, and getting an accountability buddy will make sure you get it. So highly recommend that book. But an accountability partner is going to be the difference, I believe, in between you being successful and maybe not successful. The number one reason entrepreneurs fail is a lack of accountability. And I don't want to see that happen to you. If you walk into my office, you're going to see the 25 economic fundamentals on my wall. And I review this frequently. So I gave each of you a copy of this. These principles I'm held accountable to at a very high level in my role. And I think a lot of these are applicable to you in your business as well. So I wanted to go over a few of them. Especially the first five: lead with revenue, not expenses. So that would apply to all of you as real estate agents. I get a brand new agent walks in my office, and the first thing they ask me almost every single time is, do you have any open offices? And my answer to them is, I'm so glad you're excited and you want an office. Let me tell you about our first economic fundamental principles here. We talk about leading with revenue. So this is what we're going to do. We have day area spaces here, and that's where I want you to start. After you have a first closing and you're up and going and you have money coming in the door, let's talk about moving you into a cubicle. Once you have some steady income, then we can talk about and you're capping, then we can talk about moving into an office, because we talk about the principle of leading with revenue, not expenses. Okay, principle number 2, keep your debt low and get it to zero. If you look at our balance sheet at KW, and we're an open book company, we have zero debt. When things get hard, and you see real estate companies fail, the reason KW doesn't, we carry zero debt. Number 3, keep overhead and fixed expenses low.
And Novely, I want to speak to those first 3, because I'm curious, just by raise of hand, how many of you, and this is more so to the agents who've been in the business for a while, how many of you have had your best earning year sometime in the last 5 years of your career? Okay. How many of you, that's going to be 2023, are on track to beat your previous best? Okay, a few of you, which is awesome. What I'll tell you is there's something that happens when your income increases. What happens typically with your expenses? Right. There's this expense creep that takes place, right? Lifestyle creep happens as well. And typically when a market shifts, what happens with those expenses? They stay the same, right? Even though income shrinks. So one of the great things that Mark King was even pointing out is if you're seeing already, you should look at your business year over year. We have this report for every agent who's been with KW, as we call the multi-year trend. If you need help accessing that, we can show you how to do it at the front desk. But basically that multi-year trend will show you year over year, every production for every month since you've been with KW. So if you've been here for 10 years, it's pretty cool to look at that report and see some of the trends that happen. But one of the things that's important is looking at, well, if my business has dropped by 25% production-wise, how much should my expenses also drop? At least that much, right? And we should also say, well, hey, if I'm going to really just play things safe in this timeline, I probably should cut it a little bit more than what my business production has dropped, right? So typically the issues we run into is we're not cutting fast enough, okay? And so just in this time, we want to help everybody be very mindful we're not completely out of the clear right now, especially with way interest rates are going. And so we want you to be prepared for fourth quarter that we're stepping into, right? Third and fourth quarter. And just make sure that that's one of your top mind, those three categories.
That's a great point. KW does have a chart of accounts. You can find it online. If not, I can provide that for you, and how they suggest that you code your expenses, use high volume, low margin. Number 7, run a fixed expense budget with very few variances. A variance is when you have a amount that you budget and you go over that. That's what I talked about when all those guys are staring at me when I went over my budget a certain amount, certain category. Carefully review your balance sheet monthly. Number 9, and income statement weekly. Number 18, share the decisions. Number 22, what you focus on expands, so know your key numbers. And number 24, profit is not the purpose, but it is the goal and the fundamental measure of a healthy business. So numbers obviously are my job around here, and I'm accountable to those at a high level, but I also love to help you with your numbers, and I'm happy to meet with you, review those with you, and help you with those if you're ever interested. I'd be happy to meet with you and go over them if you'd like to do that. Any questions? So your commitment to me is what? 90 days in business and personal. You're going to label everything 3 different colors, and then you're going to take action. And if you don't know what the expense is, you're going to what?
Cut it.
Cut it and wait and see what happens, right? After you speak to your significant other, if you have one. Because I don't want anybody having relationship issues on that because of that decision.
You just blame it on Novalee.
Yeah, don't come. Bring that back to me.
Cool. Before we give Novalee a hand, are there any financial or money questions that you have in mind around structuring your business, running your financials, or anything from today that stood out to you? Great.
Should all realtors have an S corp?
Should you?
Yes.
Anybody who's making more than $40,000 a year, from all of the CPAs that I've talked to, they all agree that absolutely you should have an S corp.
And typically, you want to talk to your CPA to verify, but typically they'll structure it as an LLC, taxed
Tax as an S corp. Yeah.
because then you have the liability protection and the tax benefits of the S corp.
Make sure you're doing payroll if you go that way. If you go that route, though.
I found out the hard way. This nobody knows this last tax season. So make sure that if you're a newer agent and you plan to get in production, just to take the initiative to get that LLC set up, and then save yourself some money on taxes.
Better show faith in yourself if you're gonna make more than 40,000.
Yeah.
Like if you're like, oh, I don't know, I'm like, well, then nobody else knows if you are either. So you better like,
There's responsibilities that come with that. Make sure you understand what those are and you're willing to have your annual meeting and your minutes and all of those. Don't go into it blindly. Make sure that you understand what those are. An LLC is very inexpensive to set up. Very inexpensive. In fact, a basic LLC you could probably do yourself just online at the state of Utah. But if you're talking setting up an LLC, I would have someone help you with that knows what they are doing.
Yeah. So you can do average CPA will do one for like $450. I just set one up last week through LegalZoom. It cost me $200, and that includes a $50 filing with the Utah state. So $150 for EIN number and operating agreement and get the entity set up.
But if you do it that way, make sure that you hire a payroll company. You have to do payroll. Once you set that up, you're required to do payroll in order to be in compliance. So you'll need a payroll company.
Well, and we speak as to why Novalee, because
It's a requirement to maintain an S corp that you do payroll to yourself
because
for a portion of your wages.
And the benefit is this, you are saving a ton on self-employment tax if you do it that way.
when's the next time you teach that class?
I'm teaching it with all of the other MCAs in August. I can't remember the date, but I'll post the flyer. I have the flyer. I'll post it when it gets closer. I'm teaching it in August.
Agent financials, is that
Uh-huh.
what you're talking about?
Mhm.
Understand the why.
Yeah, and we'll go into it in depth.
Yeah, so agent financials is a deep dive on a lot of these things we're talking about and really how to structure your finances as
And
an
we
agent.
dig deep into the S
Yeah.
corp situation.
Yeah.
In that class.
Is that CE as well?
It is CE.
Yep, so that's awesome.
Ask about timing, so if you can start, you have all that set up prior to all that happening, or do you set it up after and make it work?
You cannot backdate the income. And have the income, if you earn the income and then set up your S corp, the income that you earned is not going to count towards the S corp. Is that your question?
Because it went through your personal
Because
bank account.
it's
and everything.
wherever it was paid at the time.
But what if you already have the LLC, but you haven't done the S corp yet?
Same.
Same, okay.
And-
I will pay it to the LLC. And there are benefits to that, but you won't get the S corp benefits.
And just talk to a CPA if you have an LLC set up already, because it's just making an election to be taxed as an S corp. So,
It's a simple form
Yeah.
at that point.
cool. Any others?
Well, one about that, about the, on your list of all those, and then the extended list of all the referral recommendations for companies and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have accountants that you recommend that do work with,
We do. So ours, the one that we recommend, they specialize when it comes to the agent investors. So if you are a real estate agent that's going to be investing in buying assets, you want a CPA who really understands how to give you the full benefits of being an agent and an investor. So that's the one that we recommend for that specifically. Paul Olson's awesome. The funny thing is, I actually was using him before I joined KW. And I ran into him here at the office about 6 months in. I was like, "Oh, what are you doing here, Paul?" He's like, "Oh, I do Johnny and everybody else."
Music.
So that was cool to see that he already is heavily ingrained with a lot of agents here in the
but
office.
just contacts and numbers?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Yep, Welch Olson. Yeah, so they're great.